Hey guys, and welcome back to Born in the Past. If you enjoy these explorations of history's darker, colder corners, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's a simple act that allows these stories to continue being told. Tonight, we are not walking through the gilded halls of a royal court or analyzing the strategy of a famous battle. We are traveling to a much more common and far more terrifying arena of conflict. A simple field under a dying autumn sun. We are here to understand an enemy that everyone had to face. An enemy that could not be fought with a sword or shield. An enemy called winter. So find your warmth, settle in and dim the lights. Let the modern world fall away as we journey back to a time when the changing of the seasons was not a matter of inconvenience, but a declaration of war. And survival was a victory measured in heartbeats. Our story begins with the scent of fear mixed with cold, damp earth. The air in the valley has changed. It is no longer the warm, hazy air of late summer, thick with the smell of wildflowers and buzzing insects. A new sharpness has crept in, a blade against the skin that promises what is to come. It's a chill that settles deep in your lungs with every breath. A reminder that the world is tilting away from the sun, away from life. This is the time of the last harvest. It is not a celebration. It is a frantic, desperate race against a clock that you cannot see but can feel in every aching bone of your body. From the moment the weak, watery dawn breaks over the gray hills, the entire village is in the fields. There are no exceptions. The old man with the bent back, who tells stories of winters that buried houses to their roofs, works alongside the young boy who has not yet seen 10 summers. Women, their skirts hitched up and tied at the waist, move through the rows of withered crops, their hands raw and red from the cold. Everyone is here because everyone understands the stakes. Every stalk of wheat, every gnarled turnip, pulled from the hardening soil, is a unit of life. It is another spoonful of porridge in the dead of January. Another day you will not have to watch your child's face grow thin and pale. The work is a brutal, rhythmic prayer. The metallic whisper of the scythes cutting through the last of the grain is the only music. It is a sound that is both hopeful and mournful, the sound of life being gathered before death takes the land. You swing the heavy tool until your shoulders burn with a fire that fails to warn you. Your hands are a geography of blisters and calluses, some old and hard as leather, some new and weeping. You do not stop. You cannot stop. You look up at the sky, a canvas of bruised purple clouds, and you watch for the signs. The flight of birds heading south is a silent warning. The way the wind now howls through the skeletal branches of the trees is a threat. Every villager is a reluctant expert in the omens of the coming nightmare. The Lord's Reeve rides through the fields on his horse, his face grim. He is not here to offer encouragement, only to ensure that the Lord's share, the lion's share, is collected, counted, and carted away to the stone-built storehouse of the manor. The grain that will keep the Lord and his family well fed through the winter is separated first. What is left for you, for the village, is what you must make last. You watch the cart trundle away, piled high with the fruits of your labor, and a cold knot of resentment tightens in your gut. But it is a feeling as useless and familiar as the ache in your back. It is simply the way of the world. The children's task is to follow the reapers, gleaning. They scavenge for every dropped head of grain, every overlooked pea pod. Their small, nimble fingers are better suited for this delicate work. It is taught to them as a game, but they see the worry in their parents' eyes and know it is not. They know that the contents of the small sacks they carry are as precious as any treasure. This is a lesson no child of this age forgets. Waste is a sin that winter punishes with starvation. As the sun begins its premature descent, casting long, skeletal shadows across the field, the work shifts. A harvest must be brought in, secured from the damp and the rats. You haul heavy baskets of root vegetables to the communal pit, a deep hole in the earth that will be lined with straw and covered with dirt, a makeshift tomb to preserve the food from the killing frost. The air is thick with the earthy smell of potatoes and carrots, a scent you know you will come to hate by the time spring arrives, if it arrives for you. You return to your small wattle and daub hut as true darkness falls. The single room is already filling with the smoke from the central hearth, where a meager stew is bubbling. The warmth is a blessing, but it does not reach the corners of the room, and it cannot touch the cold that has settled in your spirit. You eat your portion in near silence, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the wind pressing against the walls, testing for weakness. After the meal, there is more work. Tools to be mended, leather to be oiled, clothes to be patched. Every task is bent toward the single purpose of endurance. Before you finally succumb to a brief, troubled sleep, you step outside one last time. The night is unnaturally clear and silent. The stars are hard, brilliant chips of ice in an ink-black sky. There is no moon. The cold is more intense now, a physical presence that seems to be actively draining the warmth from your body, from the very stones of your home. You look toward the dark, northern woods that border the village, and you imagine it waiting there. Not a creature, not an army, but a presence. A great white emptiness, the specter of winter. It is no longer coming, it is here. And this is only the beginning. You stand there for a long time, a solitary figure wrapped in the profound silence of the night. The cold is an active thing now, a presence that presses in from all sides, seeping through the thick wool of your tunic. The stars, unobscured by the haze of summer or the clouds of autumn, are sharp and merciless. They do not twinkle, they glitter like chips of ice or the cold eyes of a predator. You have learned to read the world around you, not through the words in a book, but through the language of the land itself. And tonight, the land is speaking of nothing but hardship. A usual chorus of the night is gone. The crickets, the frogs, the rustling of small creatures in the undergrowth all have fallen silent, either dead or buried deep in the frozen earth. This quiet is a different kind of emptiness. It is not peaceful. It is the silence of a world holding its breath, waiting for an execution. Weeks ago, you watched the last flock of geese carve their V-shaped path across the sky, their distant calls a sad farewell. You saw the squirrels in a state of frantic, almost mad industry, burying every last nut and seed they could find before vanishing into their nests. They know. The animals always know first. Their fear is a clean, simple thing, an instinct for survival. Your fear is more complicated. It is tangled with memory, with story, and with the faces of the children sleeping inside your hut. You walk to the edge of the now barren field and crouch down. The ground is hard as iron, and a thick, white frost coats every dead stalk and stone. This is not the gentle frost of early autumn that melts with the first touch of the sun. This is a killing frost, a hoarfrost, as the elders call it. It has a crystalline, almost beautiful structure, like a delicate white fur growing over the dead world. You touch the brittle, frozen leaf of a hardy weed. It doesn't bend. It shatters in your fingers with a faint, glassy sound, turning to dust. That sound is a promise. It is what winter intends for everything that is not strong enough to endure. It is what it will do to your crops if they are not stored, to your animals if they are not sheltered, and to you if your fire ever goes out. You retreat back inside, the warmth of the hearth a welcome but fragile shield. The family is gathered close to the embers, reluctant to go to their cold, sleeping pallets. It is in these moments, in the dying light of the day's last fire, that the other whispers begin. The practical fears of frost and hunger give way to older, deeper anxieties, the ones passed down in stories that are as much a part of this village as the stones in the river. An old woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, begins to speak, her voice a low, raspy hum. She doesn't tell stories of heroes or kings. She speaks of the White Walker, the Hunger Bringer. She says it is not the wind that howls on the darkest nights, but the spirit of winter itself. A tall, gaunt figure, wrapped in a cloak of snow, its face obscured by shadow. It does not carry a weapon. It does not need one. It simply walks the land, and where it passes, warmth drains from the world. Fires flicker and die, livestock shiver and fall, and the breath of sleeping children turns to frost in their lungs. She says you must never look for it, for to see it is to invite it into your home. It is an old tale, one you have heard every autumn of your life. But in the oppressive silence of this particular night, it feels less like a story and more like a memory of something you have already seen. The stories continue, weaving a tapestry of dread. They speak of the frost sprites, tiny malicious spirits born of ice, who paint the beautiful, deadly patterns on the inside of the windows. They say, if you press your finger to the glass to trace their art, the sprite will steal the warmth from your body, leaving a numb, dead whiteness that never fades. They talk of the wood goblins, who hide inside the logs brought in for the fire, only to emerge in the dead of night, to sour the milk, tangle the weaving, and whisper nightmares into the ears of the sleepers. And so the rituals begin. Tomorrow, you know you must find the oldest, hardest piece of oak you can, and carve the symbol of the sun into the lintel above your door. It is not a cross. It is an older symbol, a circle with a cross inside, a desperate plea to a sun that has all but abandoned you. Before bed, your wife will take a small wooden bowl, fill it with a spoonful of precious porridge, and place it on the doorstep. It is an offering of appeasement to whatever spirits, great or small, might pass by in the night. It is a tax paid to the darkness, a humble admission of your own powerlessness against the forces gathering outside your thin, wattle and daub walls. You tell yourself, these are just superstitions, foolish traditions to comfort frightened minds. You are a practical man. Your faith is in the sharpness of your axe, the strength of your back, and the depth of your food stores. But as you finally lie down on the straw-filled pallet, pulling the rough wool blankets up to your chin, you listen, and the wind, which moments ago was just wind, now seems to have a voice. It is a low, mournful sound that seems to shape itself into words you almost understand. You hear the whispers of the lost, the echoes of past winters, the endless, hungry complaint of the cold. The nightmare has begun, and you realize it is not a battle you will fight in the fields, but here, in the dark, inside the fragile fortress of your own mind. The dawn that follows is not a dawn at all. It is merely a slow dilution of the darkness, a shift from impenetrable black to a sullen, bruised gray. There is no sun, only a vague brightening behind a solid ceiling of cloud that presses down upon the world. The air is still, heavy with the promise of the first snow. There is no more time for reading omens, no more time for preparation. The whispers of winter have become a clear, undeniable command. Today is the day you seal the world away. Today you become a prisoner in your own home, for to remain free is to freeze. The work begins immediately, a silent, frantic flurry of activity. You and your eldest son are tasked with the walls. You mix a thick, foul-smelling slurry of clay, wet straw, and animal dung. The cold of it seeps into your hands, numbing your fingers to the bone, but you do not stop. You force the daub into every crack and fissure in the wattle walls, sealing the tiny gaps that would otherwise become invitations for the wind. Each one a tiny dagger of cold that could torment you for months. Your son, his face set with a seriousness that does not belong on a boy of 12, mimics your every move. He is learning the geometry of survival, the architecture of endurance. There is no room for error. A single overlooked crack is a weakness the enemy will exploit without mercy. Inside, your wife and daughters perform a similar ritual. They gather bundles of dried moss and old rags, stuffing them into the gaps around the doorframe and the roof beams. Every gust of wind that is kept out is a small victory, a handful of firewood that will not need to be burned. The single opening that serves as a window, which in summer offers a view of the green fields, is now to be sealed. You help stretch a piece of sheepskin, scraped thin and greased with tallow. Across the opening, it is a poor substitute for true light. It turns the gray daylight into a murky, yellow, underwater gloom. The world outside is now a collection of blurry, indistinct shapes. You have not just blocked the wind, you have blocked the world. You have traded sight for survival. The great pile of firewood, which you have spent months accumulating, now looks terrifyingly small. It is your life savings, measured not in coin, but in heat and light. You and your son spend an hour stacking it tighter, moving the most seasoned, driest logs to the area just inside the door, where they will be most accessible. Every log is precious. You can already feel yourself rationing them in your mind, calculating how many you can burn each day to make the pile last until the first thaw. You know you will miscalculate. Everyone does. There will come a day in the dead of winter when you will be forced to choose between burning a piece of furniture or freezing. Then comes the final and most transformative act of fortification, bringing the animals in. Your single milk cow, her eyes wide with confusion, is led into the lower, partitioned-off section of the longhouse. Her warm, grassy scent is a strange addition to the smoky air of the hut. The handful of chickens, squawking in protest, are brought in and secured in a small wooden coop in the corner. Their familiar clucking will become a part of the long winter soundtrack. This is the moment the home ceases to be just a home. It becomes an ark, a noisy, smelly, crowded vessel containing all the life that you are responsible for keeping safe. The clear line between man and beast dissolves. You are all now just warm bodies huddled together, a small, fragile island of life in a vast, dead ocean of cold. With the animals secured and the walls sealed, only one task remains. You stand in the doorway of your hut, your hand on the heavy wooden plank that serves as a door. You take one last look at the outside world, but landscape is leached of all color, a study in gray and brown. The skeletal trees claw at the oppressive sky. The path to the village well is already hardening into a treacherous slick of frozen mud. You breathe in the cold, clean air one final time, filling your lungs with it, knowing it is the last truly fresh air you will breathe for a long time. You are saying goodbye, not just to the day, but to the world itself. With a shared look with your son, you swing the heavy door shut. It closes with a deep, final thud. The sound echoes in the small space. Then you slide the heavy wooden bar across it, the grating sound of wood on wood, sealing your decision. The effect is instantaneous and profound. The world outside vanishes. The murky yellow light from the greased hide window is now the only natural light you have. The rest of the room is plunged into a deep, flickering gloom, illuminated only by the small, precious flames of the central hearth. The sounds of the world are gone, replaced by the crackling of the fire, the soft lowing of the cow, and the sound of your own family's breathing. You have done it. You have built your fortress. But as you stand there in the sudden, oppressive darkness, you cannot escape the feeling that you have not just locked winter out, you have locked yourselves in with the ghosts of the coming darkness. The siege has begun. In the sudden, profound darkness of your sealed home, your world shrinks to the size of a single flickering light. The sun, which for months has dictated the rhythm of your life, is now a forgotten god. Your new sun, your new deity, is the hearth. It is a demanding, temperamental god, and your family are its devoted, desperate acolytes. Everything in your existence now bends toward this small circle of fire, a tiny, defiant island of warmth in an ocean of encroaching cold. The geography of your home is immediately redefined. There is the hearth world, a space of perhaps 6 feet in every direction from the glowing embers. And then there is the outer dark. The hearth world is where life happens. It is where you sit, where you work, where you eat, and where you will arrange your sleeping pallets in a tight semicircle, like supplicants before an altar. To step into the outer dark, into the corners of the room, is to enter another climate. The air there is still and bitingly cold. The shadows are thick and absolute. It is a place of storage, of waste, and of things best left undisturbed. You watch your youngest child, who strays too far from the fire, run back with a shiver, his hands outstretched to the flames, a silent lesson learned. You are all tethered to this fire, not by ropes, but by the primal, desperate need for warmth. The fire is a living entity, and it is hungry. Tending to it is no longer a simple chore. It is the most vital duty in the household, a ritual that cannot be neglected. This task falls to your wife. She is the keeper of the flame, a high priestess in a religion of survival. You watch her movements honed by a lifetime of winters. She does not simply toss logs onto the blaze. She places each piece with the care of a master craftsman, calculating how its size and density will affect the burn, ensuring the heat is steady, but the consumption of precious fuel is slow. Her greatest skill is revealed at night. She does not let the fire die. To restart a flame in the frigid, damp darkness of a winter morning, with only flint and steel, is a miserable, uncertain task. Instead, she banks the embers. She carefully covers the glowing heart of the fire with a thick layer of ash, starving it of air but preserving its heat. It is a delicate process, a way of putting the god to sleep without letting it die. You have seen the panic on a morning when the embers were too weak, the frantic, desperate work with the small leather bellows, coaxing a single, reluctant spark back into a true flame. The collective silent sigh of relief when it finally catches is more heartfelt than any prayer said in church. This hearth is also your kitchen, your only kitchen. An iron cauldron, blackened with the soot of 1,000 meals, hangs from a hope over the flames day and night. Into this pot goes the substance of your winter life. A handful of oats, some dried peas, a few chopped root vegetables, and, if you are fortunate that week, a small, gristly piece of salted pork to lend its flavor to the watery broth. This is pottage. It is what you ate yesterday, what you are eating today, and what you will eat tomorrow. The smell of it, a thick, vaguely savory, monotonous smell, clings to everything in the hut. Your clothes, your hair, your skin. It is the scent of survival. Sometimes, for a treat, your wife will rake a portion of the hot ashes aside and bury a lump of coarse, dark dough within them. The resulting bread is dense, smoky, and often gritty with ash, but its solid warmth in your belly feels like a luxury. But this god, this fire, is a treacherous one. It gives life with one hand and takes it with the other. The smoke is a constant presence. With no proper chimney, only a small covered hole in the thatched roof, most of the smoke stays within the room. It hangs in the air like a perpetual fog, stinging your eyes, making them red raw and watery. It coats the back of your throat with a layer of acrid soot, and by the time midwinter arrives, everyone in the family will have developed a deep, rattling cough. The winter cough, they call it, as if it were a natural part of the season. You try not to think about the blackness you sometimes spit up in the morning. And then there is the fear of the sparks. The fire is an open wound in the center of a room made of flammable materials. Straw on the floor, thatch on the roof, dry wooden walls. A single errant spark, carried on an updraft, could mean annihilation. You watch the children constantly, pulling them back when they get too close. A blanket laid out to dry must be watched with unblinking vigilance. You have heard stories of families who lost everything in minutes, forced out into the snow with no food, no shelter, a fate worse than a quick death. So you live with this dual reality. You huddle closer to the thing that is slowly poisoning you, praying to the thing that could instantly destroy you. As the first true winter storm begins to rage outside, the wind howling like a hungry wolf against the walls of your hut, you stare into the dancing flames. It is your shield. It is your tormentor. It is the heart of your prison. With the fire established as the center of your universe, you become acutely aware of the boundaries of that universe. Your world has shrunk. It is no longer a landscape of fields, forests, and streams. It is this room. One room. This smoky, dim, crowded space is your entire reality, and it will be for months to come. You are the captain of a ship that will not dock, sailing an endless, frozen sea of night. The floor beneath your feet is not wood, but packed earth. Away from the immediate warmth of the hearth, it is perpetually cold and damp, a constant reminder of the frozen ground that lies just inches beneath you. Straw is scattered across it, a flimsy defense against the chill and the filth. It is meant to be swept out and replaced, but as the winter deepens and the door remains barred, it will simply be trodden down, becoming a sodden, compressed layer of mud, animal droppings, and stilled food. This ground is the stage upon which your entire life will now play out. In this shrunken world, the greatest casualty is privacy. The very concept ceases to exist. There are no walls to separate you, no doors to close. You are never alone, not for a single moment. When you wish to have a quiet, serious word with your wife, your children are there, their eyes wide, listening to every word. When you feel a surge of frustration or despair, you must swallow it down, for your son is there, watching you, learning from you what it means to be a man in the face of this long, waking nightmare. Your every sigh, every cough, every muttered word is a public performance. The sleeping arrangement is the ultimate expression of this communal existence. You do not have a bed. You have a shared space on a low wooden platform built against the wall, or simply a designated patch of floor where the family straw-filled pallets are laid side by side. You sleep pressed against each other, a huddle of human warmth against the vast, indifferent cold. You feel the twitch of your daughter's leg as she dreams. You hear the wheezing snore of your father-in-law. You smell the sour breath of your son sleeping beside you. At night, you can hear every secret sound the body makes. A stomach groaning with hunger. A quiet weeping in the dark. The ragged, wet cough of sickness taking hold. Being alone is not simply impossible. It is a fantasy so distant it might as well be a memory of another life. Your only private space is the inside of your own skull. And even that fortress is constantly besieged by the inescapable reality of the room. And that reality is a symphony of stench and sound. The air you breathe is not air. It is a thick, heavy stew of smells, a constant assault on the senses. The dominant note is the acrid, greasy smoke from the fire, a smell that clings to the roof beams, the walls, and the inside of your lungs. Beneath that is the smell of the animals, the sharp ammonia tang of their waste mingling with the warm, earthy scent of the cow and the musty odor of wet chicken feathers. Then there is the smell of humanity itself, the sour odor of unwashed bodies, the stale sweat trapped in layers of damp wool, and the faint, sweet, sickly scent of infection that begins to rise from someone's persistent cough. The room does not have a snow. The room is a smell. The soundscape is just as relentless. There is no such thing as silence. Silence would be terrifying, for it would mean the fire has died. So you live within a constant chorus, the endless, hypnotic crackle and hiss of the burning logs, the low, mournful howl of the wind outside, a sound that never ceases, only changes in pitch and intensity, and the chorus of life inside, the soft, rhythmic chewing of the cow's cud, the occasional frantic clucking of a disturbed chicken, the deep, rattling snores of the sleepers, and most heartbreakingly, the thin, weak cry of a child who is too cold or too hungry or too sick to find comfort in sleep. This is the music of your winter. It is a symphony where every instrument is a different note of survival or a prelude to suffering. You try, sometimes, to remember what summer feels like. You try to conjure the memory of standing alone in the middle of a field, the sun warm on your back, a fresh breeze carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers. You try to remember the feeling of personal space, of silence that was peaceful, not threatening. But the memory is a pale, fleeting ghost. It feels like it happened to another person. To dwell on it for too long is a dangerous indulgence, a path to a quiet sort of madness. You push it away. You have to. The only thing that is real is the fire, the smoke, the family, the animals. The only thing that is real is this one room. This is your world, and you must survive it. Your world may be one room, but within that room there is a space more sacred and more terrifying than any church altar. It is the corner where the food is kept. This is your treasury, your vault, the measure of your family's fragile hold on life. There is no gold here, no jewels. There are sacks of barley and oats, lumpy and reassuringly heavy for now. There are strings of dried onions and hardy herbs hanging from the rafters. Their faint, papery scent, a ghost of summer's gardens. There is a barrel of salted fish, the sharp, pungent smell of the sea, a strange memory in this landlocked frozen world. And there is the great salt pork cask, its wood stained dark with brine, holding the precious meat that will see you through the darkest months. You find your eyes drawn to this corner throughout the day, a merchant constantly, nervously, taking stock of his dwindling wealth. The monotony of your diet is a form of slow torture, a psychological wearing down that is as relentless as the cold. The pottage is the constant. Every day the cauldron bubbles with the same grayish, lumpy gruel. The taste is always the same. The blandness of boiled grain, the faint sweetness of a root vegetable, the overwhelming taste of wood smoke. You have learned to eat without tasting, to swallow without thinking. It is fuel, nothing more. To think of the rich, roasted meats of the harvest festival, or the simple pleasure of a fresh-picked apple, is to invite a kind of pain that serves no purpose. You eat what is there. You are grateful to have it. And you try not to remember what real food tastes like. The rationing of these supplies is a silent daily ritual, performed with the gravity of a religious ceremony. Your wife is the keeper of this treasury. Each morning, after stoking the fire, she goes to the food corner. You watch her, pretending not to watch. You see the way she carefully unties the knot on a sack of oats, her movements deliberate and slow. The wooden scoop she uses is never heaped high. It is always perfectly level. She counts out the dried peas, one by one. When she cuts a piece from the salt pork, it is a sliver, so thin it is almost translucent, just enough to add a hint of flavor to the pot. Her face during this ritual is a mask of intense concentration. She is not just cooking a meal. She is performing the brutal arithmetic of survival. Every scoop she takes is a day removed from your future. Every pea is a small coin spent from a finite inheritance. This arithmetic haunts you, too. As you sit mending a piece of leather harness, your hands busy, your mind is in the food corner. You are counting the strings of onions in your head. You are trying to estimate how many sacks of grain remain, trying to remember how quickly you went through them last winter, which was said to be a mild one. Was this harvest better? You think so, but you're not sure. Doubt is a worm that burrows into your thoughts. You find yourself doing the math over and over. 20 weeks until the thaw, if you are lucky. How many meals is that? The numbers swim in your head, meaningless and terrifying at the same time. You look at the faces of your children, and you see not just their features, but their appetites, their needs, and the knot of anxiety in your stomach tightens. A slow decay has already begun to show. It is not dramatic, but a subtle fading of vitality. You notice a persistent weariness in your limbs that has nothing to do with hard labor. When your son cuts his hand while chopping kindling, the wound is slow to heal, remaining an angry red line for days longer than it should. You look at your wife's hands in the firelight and see that her fingernails are brittle, cracking easily. And one evening, you notice your youngest daughter rubbing her gums, a thin line of blood on her finger when she pulls it away. It is the first whisper of scurvy, the curse of a diet without fresh greens or fruits. It is a sign that your bodies, like the food stores, are being slowly depleted. There are moments of fleeting joy. Of course, one morning, a hen, who has not produced anything for weeks, lays a single, perfect brown egg. It feels like a miracle. The excitement is electric. The egg is boiled carefully in the pottage pot and then divided with painstaking fairness into 5 tiny portions, one for each child. You and your wife watch as they eat their share, their eyes wide with pleasure at the rich, creamy taste. For a single moment, the hut is filled with a genuine, uncomplicated happiness. But as soon as it is over, the reality of the situation returns. That small gift from the hen only serves to highlight the bleakness of everything else. It is a single, bright candle in a vast and encroaching darkness. And as you lie down to sleep, you listen for the faint, telltale scratching of racks near the grain sacks, and you pray that your small hoard will remain untouched by the other hungry things that share this winter with you. The world, having shrunk to the size of a single room, now forces a similar shrinking of the self. You are no longer just a man, a husband, a father. You are a component in a complex, fragile machine built for a single purpose: collective survival. Every person in this hut is a gear in that machine. If one gear breaks, the entire contraption shudders and risks falling apart. This enforced cooperation, this winter's social contract, is both your greatest strength and a source of constant, grinding friction. The days, though dark, are not idle. Idleness is a path to madness, so a new rhythm is established, a rhythm of winter work. After the morning meal of pottage, the family arranges itself around the fire, and the quiet labor begins. You take up a piece of brittle leather harness that broke during the harvest and begin the slow, painstaking process of mending it. Your fingers, stiff with cold, struggle with the awl and thread. It is frustrating work, but it is necessary. Every tool must be ready for the spring, for if you survive until then, there will be no time for repairs. You must be ready to plow the instant the ground softens. Across the hearth, your wife sits at her small, upright loom. The rhythmic clack-clack of the shuttle, a constant, soothing sound in the smoky air. She is weaving coarse, heavy wool into a new blanket, a task that will take her months to complete. Her face is a mask of serene focus, but you know her mind is as busy as yours, calculating, worrying. Your eldest daughter sits beside her, carding wool, her small hands pulling the rough fibers between two wooden paddles, preparing them for the spindle. She is learning the endless, repetitive tasks of womanhood. Your son, meanwhile, sits beside you, carefully carving a new handle for a knife from a piece of seasoned birch. He works with a quiet intensity, his tongue sticking out from the corner of his mouth in concentration. There is no formal instruction. They learn by watching, by absorbing the slow, deliberate movements of their elders. This is how skills are passed on. This is how a culture endures. When the light from the greased hide window fades completely, the work that requires sight must end. And then another ritual begins. The elder, your wife's father, clears his throat. His voice, thin and reedy with age, fills the hut. This is the time for stories. The old man is the village library, the keeper of the tales. Tonight, he does not speak of the winter spirits. He speaks of a great chieftain from 3 generations past. A warrior who united the local clans against invaders from the north. He describes battles in vivid detail, the glint of sun on steel, the roar of the war horns. You all stop your work to listen. The firelight dances on the rapt faces of your children. For a few precious moments, the hut is no longer a smoky prison. It is a great hall, filled with heroes and the echoes of glory. The stories are more than entertainment. They are a lifeline. They are a reminder that your people have faced hardship before, that there were times of strength and honor, and that this winter, too, is just one chapter in a much longer saga. The stories bind you together, reinforcing a shared identity, a shared history that gives meaning to your shared suffering. But the bonds forged by cooperation and storytelling are tested daily by the immense pressure of confinement. The smallest things become unbearable. The way the old man noisily slurps his pottage, the persistent wet sniffle of your youngest child, the sharp, impatient tone in your wife's voice when she asks for more firewood. These are trivialities, sparks of annoyance that in summer would be extinguished by a breath of fresh air and open space. But here, in this claustrophobic, sealed world, they have nowhere to go. They hang in the air like the smoke, irritating everyone. One evening, it happens. A dispute, sharp and ugly, erupts from nothing. Your son accidentally knocks over the water pail, spilling a precious portion of the day's water onto the dirt floor. Before you can stop her, your wife snaps at him, her voice tight with the accumulated stress of weeks of worry. Your son, shamed, begins to cry. You, in turn, feel a surge of anger at her harshness, and you speak a sharp word to her. The argument is over in seconds, but a heavy. Fewer people feel anger at one another. When those words get spoken, the argument is over in seconds, but a heavy, toxic silence descends upon the hut. The children freeze. The old man stares into the fire, pretending not to have heard. The work stops. The only sound is the howling of the wind outside, which suddenly seems much louder, much closer. You feel a wave of immediate, sickening regret. Anger is a fire that consumes precious fuel. It serves no purpose. It is a poison you have just released into your own small ark. After a long, tense silence, you rise, place a hand on your son's shoulder, and then meet your wife's eyes across the hearth. There are no words of apology. There is only a shared, weary look of understanding, a silent agreement. The enemy is outside the walls, not within them. Later that night, as a particularly violent gust of wind shakes the hut, you all startle as one. The shared moment of external fear is a strange kind of medicine. It instantly dissolves the last remnants of the argument. You are a unit, bound by a single fate. The social contract of your small, shrunken world, though cracked and strained, has held. For now, a cold is a physical tyrant, a master that governs your body with a fist of ice. But it has a twin, a partner in its oppression that rules your mind with equal cruelty. That twin is the darkness. In the modern world, you have tamed the night, filled it with a billion artificial suns until true darkness is a rarity, a novelty. But here, in the heart of the medieval winter, darkness is not the absence of light. It is a presence. It is a thick, smothering blanket that covers the world for most of every day, and its weight is a heavy thing to bear. The day, if you can call it that, is a brief, grudging affair. The sun appears late, a sickly yellow disk that seems to struggle to climb above the southern hills. It offers no warmth, only a pale gray twilight that illuminates a dead and frozen world. It limps across the sky for a few short hours before vanishing again in the middle of the afternoon. Defeated. For the next 16 hours, you are plunged into an ocean of ink. A true and profound blackness that the modern eye has never witnessed. This is a darkness that feels solid, a darkness that swallows sound and smothers hope. Inside your hut, you wage a pathetic, desperate war against this ocean of night. Your greatest weapon, the hearth, is a flawed one. It does not provide steady, even light. It provides a chaotic, flickering, dancing light that brings the shadows to life. The darkness in the corners of the room is not banished. It is made to writhe and twist. The familiar objects of your home become monstrous silhouettes in the firelight. A pile of sheepskins becomes a crouching beast. The loom becomes a skeletal cage. Your own shadow, thrown against the wall, is a grotesque, elongated giant that mimics your every move, a silent, dark twin that is always with you. Your other sources of light are pitiful. You have a small supply of rushlights, which you prepared in the autumn. You spent days gathering the pithy stems of the rush plant, peeling them carefully, and then dipping the long wicks into a pot of hot, stinking tallow, rendered from sheep fat. Now, when the darkness becomes too oppressive to bear, or when a task must be done that requires more than the fire's fickle glow, you light one. The rushlight does not burn with a steady flame. It sputters and hisses, the melting fat dripping down its sides. It gives off a weak, greasy yellow light and a smell like rancid meat. It illuminates a circle no larger than a dinner plate, and it lasts for perhaps 20 minutes before guttering out, plunging you back into the gloom. To light a rushlight is a conscious decision, a trade of precious stored energy for a brief, smoky respite from the dark. You have a few true tallow candles, thick and lumpy, saved from the last festival at the church. These are your treasures. They are kept wrapped in a dry cloth, hidden away like a king's jewels. A candle is only lit in moments of true need, if a child falls gravely ill and must be tended to through the night, or if a vital piece of equipment requires a delicate repair that cannot be done by feel alone. When a candle is lit, its steady, warm, yellow flame feels like a miracle. It pushes the darkness back. It feels like a small piece of the sun has been brought into your hut. The family will gather around it, their faces bathed in its gentle light, their spirits momentarily lifted. But the candle, like all good things in winter, is finite. Watching it burn down, watching your most precious source of light melt into a useless puddle of wax, is its own special kind of pain. This perpetual darkness seeps into your mind. Without the clear markers of sunrise and sunset, time begins to lose its meaning. The days blur into one long, monotonous twilight of working, eating, and sleeping. A heavy lethargy settles upon the family. Conversations grow shorter, punctuated by long, empty silences where everyone simply stares into the fire, lost in their own private gloom. This is the long night sickness, a quiet, creeping despair that drains the will as surely as the cold drains the warmth. And the darkness feeds your fear. Every sound from outside is magnified, distorted. The howl of the wind is no longer just the wind. It is the cry of the White Walker from the old stories. A branch scraping against the roof is not a branch. It is the claw of a frost sprite trying to find a way in. Your mind, starved of light and stimulation, begins to populate the shadows with the creatures of folklore. You find yourself glancing nervously into the dark corners of the hut, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back. One evening, you try to restring the leather loop on a wooden bucket. The task requires a small, nimble movement. You light one of your precious rushlights and hold it close. You squint in the weak, sputtering light, your eyes aching from the smoke. The needle is small. The leather is stiff. You try once, twice, and fail. Your fingers are too numb with cold, your vision too compromised by the gloom. The rushlight gives a final, wet hiss and dies, leaving you with nothing but the dancing firelight and the mocking shadows. You put the bucket down, defeated. You have survived another day, but you have lost the battle against the night. The darkness, you realize, is not just a force outside your walls. It is a void that is growing inside you, a cold, lightless space where hope struggles to survive. The fever, like a fire fed on dry tinder, eventually burns itself out. It leaves behind a fragile quiet, a world of exhaustion and shallow breaths. Your daughter survives, but she is a pale, thin ghost of her former self, and the ordeal has cost the family dearly in spirit and in precious, stored energy. But as one enemy retreats, another, which has been lurking in the corners of your mind all along, steps forward to take its place. It is the isolation. It is the slow, grinding pressure of a world that has shrunk to nothing. One morning, after a night of heavy, silent snowfall, you push against the heavy wooden door. It doesn't budge. You put your shoulder into it and with a great effort, force it open just a crack. You are not greeted by the familiar sight of the path to the well or the neighboring huts. You are greeted by a solid wall of white. The snow has drifted during the night, burying your home up to its eaves. The murky light that filters through the crack is blue and cold. There is no landscape. There is no path. There is no world. There is only an endless, featureless, silent desert of snow. The other houses in the village are just soft, white mounds, indistinguishable from the drifts around them. The sky and the land have merged into a single oppressive entity of white. A sight confirms a truth you have felt growing for weeks. You are utterly, completely cut off. There will be no visiting priest, no traveling peddler with news from the outside world, no chance encounter with a neighbor. The thread connecting you to the rest of humanity has been cut. Your family, this small, coughing, hungry group of people, is the whole of mankind. Your hut is the whole of the world. And the silence outside is absolute. It is the silence of a tomb. With this realization, a new kind of sickness begins to fester, a sickness of the mind. The four walls of your home, once a fortress, now feel like the sides of a coffin. A frantic, restless energy begins to build in your chest. It is an irrational urge to move, to do something. You feel a desperate need to smash down the door and run out into the blinding snow, not to get anywhere, but simply to break the crushing monotony of your confinement. You pace the small, clear space by the fire, a caged animal wearing a groove in the dirt floor. Your family watches you, their eyes dull. They understand the feeling. They are all your fellow prisoners. The small, endearing habits of your loved ones, which once brought you comfort, now magnify into sources of unbearable irritation. The rhythmic click of your white loom shuttle, once a soothing sound, is now a relentless, maddening tick that drills into your skull. The low, whistling sound your son makes through his teeth as he concentrates on a carving makes you want to scream. You feel a rage building inside you that is entirely out of proportion to its cause. You know it is madness, but you cannot stop it. The mind, starved of new sights, new sounds, new information, begins to turn on itself, seizing on any tiny imperfection as a focus for its distress. At other times, the opposite takes hold. The agitation gives way to a profound, soul-crushing apathy. You will sit for an hour, then two, simply staring into the fire, your mind a complete gray blank. The harness that needs mending lies forgotten at your feet. Your wife's loom is still. The stories of the old man have dried up. What is the point? What is the point of mending a tool for a spring that feels like a child's fable? The future has become an abstract concept. The only reality is the flickering flame and the oppressive weight of the silence. Your mind, trapped and bored, begins to play tricks on you. It turns inward, and it becomes a dangerous, unreliable place. You start to doubt your own memories. You try to picture the village green in the height of summer, lush and vibrant, but the image is flat and colorless, like a faded tapestry. Did it ever really exist? Or was it just a dream you had once? You think of your neighbors in the other huts. Are they still alive? A darker thought follows, unbidden. Do they have more food than you? Did they have a better harvest? Suspicion, like a sickness, begins to infect your thoughts. You are no longer living by the rhythm of the sun, but by the rhythm of your own decaying thoughts. Time itself loses its shape. Was that argument with your wife yesterday or a week ago? You cannot be sure. Each day is a perfect, miserable copy of the last one. There is only the cycle of waking, eating your meager portion, working without purpose, and falling into a troubled, dreamless sleep. One afternoon, you watch a small spider methodically spinning its web in the smoky rafters. You watch its patient, repetitive, instinctive work for a long time, mesmerized. You feel a strange, hollow kinship with the creature. It too is a prisoner in this sealed world. It too is endlessly performing its function, waiting for something that may never come. The world outside has been erased, and you are beginning to fear that the world inside your own head is being erased along with it, leaving nothing but a web of dark, circular thoughts and a patient, silent waiting. The lethargy of isolation, the slow mental decay of your confinement, is shattered in an instant by a single sound. It is not the familiar mournful howl of the wind, nor the groan of your hut settling under the weight of the snow. This sound cuts through the night with a terrifying clarity. It is a long, high, predatory howl. It is a sound that speaks of hunger, of the hunt, and of a wildness that your small, smoky world has tried so hard to keep at bay. Instantly, the heavy blanket of apathy is thrown off. Your senses, dulled by weeks of monotony, are suddenly razor sharp. You are on your feet before you are even aware of having made the decision to move. Across the hearth, you see the same stark terror reflected in your wife's wide eyes. The children, who were dozing, are now sitting bolt upright, their small faces pale in the firelight. The air in the room has changed. It is no longer thick with just smoke and despair. It is now charged with the electric hum of primal fear. The howl comes again, closer this time, and it is answered by another, then another, from different directions. It is not one lone animal. It is a pack. They are close, too close. The stories the old man told of wolves grown so bold with hunger they would stalk the edges of the village in broad daylight, are no longer just stories. They are here. Winter has sent its foot soldiers. Then the sounds become more intimate, more terrifying. You hear a soft, scraping noise against the outer wall, the sound of claws on frozen mud and wood. A low, guttural growl rumbles from just outside the door, a sound so deep you feel it in the soles of your feet. Then a wet snuffling sound at the base of the door as an animal pushes its nose into the cracks, drinking in the scent of the life huddled within. They can smell you. They can smell the lingering scent of your cooking, the warmth of your bodies, and most of all, they can smell your livestock. Your animals, your precious living larder, erupt in a symphony of terror. The chickens, a bundle of feathered panic, begin to squawk and flutter wildly in their coop. The cow lets out a long, low, mournful bellow, a sound of pure fear that echoes in the small hut. Their panic feeds your own. They know, just as you know, that you are all trapped in this wooden box together, and the hunters are just outside. Your role in this small world shifts instantly. You are no longer just a prisoner of the winter. You are now the guard of the prison. You move to the corner where you keep your tools, and your hand closes around the smooth, worn handle of your wood-splitting axe. It feels clumsy and heavy in your hands, poorly balanced for a fight, but it is the only weapon you have. Its sharpened iron edge is the only answer you can offer to the teeth and claws on the other side of the wall. You take up a position by the door, your back pressed against the cold wood, the axe held ready. "Stay away from the walls," you whisper, your voice a harsh rasp. "Be silent." The command is unnecessary. The entire family is frozen, a tableau of fear, their eyes fixed on you and on the door. The only movement is the wild, dancing light of the fire. The scratching at the door becomes more insistent, more aggressive. You hear the heavy, solid thud of a body throwing itself against the wood. The door groans, the wooden bar straining under the impact. You instinctively throw your own weight against it, adding your strength to the defense, your shoulder pressed hard against the splintery plank. You can feel the vibrations of their movements through the wood, a terrifying, tactile connection to the violence just inches away. They are testing you. They are testing your fortress for any sign of weakness. Your eyes dart to the fire, the center of your world, and a new, desperate thought takes hold. You grab a long piece of kindling and hold its tip in the embers until it catches fire. The burning brand feels like a pathetic, flickering star in the darkness, but it's a weapon. The smell of burning wood fills the air, mingling with the smell of fear. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sounds cease. The scratching stops. The howling fades into the distance, swallowed by the sound of the wind. A profound, heavy silence descends. But you do not relax. You do not lower the axe. You know they are not gone. They are merely circling, a patient, intelligent pack of predators. They are as tireless and as hungry as the winter itself. The tangible, breathing nightmare is out there, in the darkness, and you are the only thing standing between it and the sleeping hearts of your family. And the night is far, far from over. The hours after the wolves' assault pass in a state of heightened, terrified vigilance. No one sleeps. You remain by the door, axe in hand, listening to the silence, which is somehow more menacing than the howling was. Every creak of the hut, every rustle of the straw is a potential threat. The fire is kept burning higher than usual, a beacon of defiance in the oppressive dark. The children, their eyes wide and dark, are huddled together under a sheepskin. too frightened to even whisper. It is into this profound, shared terror that the old man, your wife's father, begins to speak. His voice is different this time. It lacks the sing-song mythic quality he uses for tales of folklore. It is low, flat, and heavy, with a weight that feels more like memory than imagination. "The wolves are a terrible thing," he begins, his gaze fixed on the flames. "They are teeth and hunger in the dark. But there are worse things. There are hungers that make wolves of men. I will tell you a true story. A story from the time of my grandfather's grandfather. A time when the winter did not last for one season, but for 3 long years." He speaks of the Great Famine. He does not use a year, for peasants do not measure time that way. He calls it the time of the endless rain. It began not with snow, but with a cold, relentless deluge in the spring. The fields, newly plowed and sown with precious seed, turned to vast, soupy marshes. The seeds rotted in the ground. The summer came, but the sun was a weak, watery stranger behind a permanent veil of gray cloud. The rains continued. The rivers swelled, flooding what little pasture remained. The harvest that year never came. At first, he says, it was merely hardship. The lords raised the price of grain from their storehouses, and people ate less. But then the second year came, and it was the same. The storehouses were empty. The seed grain from the year before had been eaten. There was nothing to plant, even if the fields had not been waterlogged. And that is when the true nightmare began. He describes a world turned upside down. Entire villages were abandoned as people became wanderers, moving skeletons drifting across the landscape in search of anything to eat. The roads were lined with the dead and dying, their bodies too thin to even interest the crows. The bonds of community and kinship, the very fabric of society, dissolved under the acid of starvation. A man would guard his meager turnip patch with an axe, ready to kill a neighbor for a single root. Knights and lords found themselves powerless. You cannot threaten a starving man with death. You cannot command an army that has nothing to eat. The world, he says, was gripped by a single all-consuming thought: food. His voice drops lower still, and the children instinctively huddle closer, as if for warmth. He speaks of the unspeakable choices people had to make. First, they ate their draft animals, the great oxen that were the key to farming. In doing so, they ate their own future, ensuring that even if the weather improved, they would have no way to plow the fields. Then they ate the dogs that guarded their homes, the cats that killed the rats. They ate the rats themselves. They ate the leather from their shoes, boiling it for hours to make a foul, glutinous soup. They ate weeds, tree bark, and the straw from their own roofs. He pauses, and the only sound is the spitting of the fire. And when all that was gone, he whispers, they began to eat each other. He does not offer gruesome details. He does not need to. The quiet horror in his voice is enough. He speaks of rumors from that time, of children warned not to wander off, of travelers who were never seen again, of lonely huts where the smoke from the chimney smelled strangely sweet. He talks of people gigging up the newly buried to strip the flesh from their bones. He speaks of a world where the distinction between the living and the dead had become a matter of who was eating and who was being eaten. The story ends. The old man falls silent, his face a mask of ancient grief. He has not just told a story. He has passed on a trauma, a cultural memory of the absolute abyss. The fear of the wolves outside suddenly seems small, almost manageable, compared to the historical horror that has just been invoked in the room. You look at your own dwindling supplies, at the hunger in your children's eyes, and you understand. You are living on the edge of that same abyss. The Great Famine is not just a story from the past. It is a ghost, and it is in the room with you, watching, waiting to see if this winter will be the one that brings it back to life. The threat is no longer just personal survival. It's the fear of being part of a historical catastrophe. The old man's story of the Great Famine hangs in the air long after his voice has faded. A chill that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room. The fear of the wolves outside was a sharp, clean fear. This is something different. It is a slow, creeping dread that settles deep in your soul. The story has given a name and a history to the abyss you are all peering into, and it makes you look at your own small, fragile family with new, terrified eyes. You are no longer just a family. You are a microcosm of history, a tiny, desperate kingdom with its own vulnerable borders, its own weakest links. Your gaze falls upon your children. They are huddled together on a pallet, sharing a single woolen blanket. Your daughter, who survived a fever, is not the same. The spark of rambunctious energy that once defined her has been extinguished, replaced by a quiet, watchful stillness. She moves little, speaks less, and her large, dark eyes seem to take in everything, with a sad, weary wisdom that does not belong to a child. Winter has stolen her childhood. There are no games of chase in the village green, no laughter echoing through the woods. Play in this shrunken world is a quiet, somber affair. You watch her take two small, smooth stones and wrap them in a scrap of rag, whispering to them, rocking them as if they were her own babes. Her games are a mirror of her reality, a world of scarcity, care, and hushed anxiety. You see the physical toll the winter is taking on them. Their wrists seem too thin, their necks too fragile. In the flickering firelight, their skin has a pale, almost translucent quality. You listen to the sound of their breathing as they sleep, and every small cough or wheeze sends a fresh wave of fear through you. You know that they are like young saplings in a hard frost. Their roots are not deep enough, their branches not strong enough to withstand the full, brutal force of the season. They depend entirely on you, on the warmth of the fire and the meager contents of the pottage pot. Your love for them is a fierce, primal thing, a fire in your own chest, but it is mixed with the cold, constant terror that your love will not be enough to save them. Then you look to the other end of the circle of life, to the old man sitting closest to the hearth. It is his place of honor, but also a necessity. His thin blood no longer holds the heat as it once did. He is always cold. His hands, gnarled and twisted by a lifetime of hard labor, tremble constantly. He spends most of his days now in a state of quiet torpor, his chin sunk to his chest, his eyes fixed on the flames, but seeing something else entirely. He is lost in the landscape of his own memory, walking through the sunlit fields of his youth, speaking with the ghosts of friends and family long since turned to dust. His past has become more real, more comforting than the grim reality of the present. He is the keeper of the stories, the vessel of your village's history and wisdom. You respect him, you love him, and in the darkest, most shameful corners of your heart, you resent him. The thought comes to you unbidden, a venomous whisper, as you watch your wife ladle out the evening's meal. You see the portion she gives to the old man, as small as everyone else's, and the cold, brutal arithmetic of survival flashes through your mind. That is food that could have gone to your children. The thought is so monstrous, you feel a wave of self-loathing wash over you. You crush it, push it down into the darkness where it was born. But it was there. It is real. This is what the winter does. It forces you to think the unthinkable. It pits the sacred duty to honor your elders against the primal instinct to protect your young. It turns your heart into a battlefield. You see the knowledge of this in the old man's eyes, too. He knows he is a burden. He eats slowly, almost apologetically. He tries to make himself smaller, to take up less space, to consume less air. There is a quiet dignity in his decline, but also a profound sadness. He has lived his life, worked the land, raised a family. He should be entitled to a peaceful end, surrounded by the warmth and respect of his kin. Instead, he is fading away in this smoky, crowded room, haunted by the knowledge that his own survival is a drain on the survival of others. And so you sit, trapped between the beginning and the end of life. You look at your daughter, her face a smooth, pale canvas upon which winter is painting lines of fear and hunger. You look at your wife's father, his face a wrinkled, faded map of a life that is nearing its final destination. In the unsteady light of the fire, they look hauntingly alike. They are the bookends of your life, the fragile souls you are sworn to protect. And the terrifying certainty that you may fail them both is a cold more profound, more absolute than any winter wind. It is the true heart of the nightmare. In the quiet, desperate calculus of your existence, a new and terrible variable is introduced. It happens on a day when the wind has died down, and a fragile, watery sunlight makes the endless snowscape glitter with a beauty that feels like a cruel joke. The brief respite from the howling wind allows for a necessary trip outside, to the great woodpile that stands like a monument to your autumn labors. And that is where you see it. The footprints in the snow are not your own. They are furtive, half-filled by the blowing wind, but they are undeniably there. Someone has been here. You run your gloved hand over the woodpile. The loss is instantly obvious. It is not a huge amount, but it is not insignificant either. Perhaps a week's worth of warmth and cooking fuel, stolen in the dead of night. A hot, black anger rises in your chest, a surprising warmth in the frigid air. The cold, the hunger, the sickness, these are acts of God, the impersonal cruelty of nature. This is different. This is a betrayal. This was done by a human hand, by a neighbor. The fragile, unspoken pact of the village, that we all suffer together, that we all face this enemy as one, has been broken. The thief was not a wolf that can be forgiven for its nature. The thief is a man, just like you, who knows the value of every single log he has taken. He has not just stolen your wood, he has stolen from the mouths and bodies of your children. You return to the hut, your face a thundercloud. You do not need to speak. Your wife sees the truth in your eyes, and a new, uglier tension enters the room. The paranoia that had been a fleeting, internal thought now becomes a shared, spoken reality. Who was it? The question hangs in the air, thick and poisonous. Your mind, once a fortress against despair, now becomes a courtroom where your neighbors are tried and convicted without evidence. You think of William, whose hut lies at the edge of the village. He has a sick wife and 4 children. His need would be great, but you have always known him to be an honest man. Or is he? What is honesty in the face of a child shivering? You think of Thomas, a man you have never trusted, who always seemed to have a bit more than his neighbors. You picture him, his face smug, warming himself by your stolen fire. The image makes you grip the handle of your axe until your knuckles are white. You look through a crack in the wall, towards the thin plumes of smoke rising from the other huts. You find yourself judging them. Is Thomas's smoke thicker today? Does William's fire burn brighter? You have become a spy in your own village, and every neighbor is now a potential enemy. The community has fractured. The circle of trust has shrunk to the 4 walls of this room. That evening, the old man, sensing the black mood in the hut, tells another story. It is not a story of heroes or monsters. It is a story about justice. He speaks of a winter in his own youth, a winter almost as hard as this one, when a man was caught stealing a sack of dried peas from the village priest. He describes what happened next. The thief was not shown mercy. There was no understanding of his desperation. He had broken the winter's law, the most sacred law of all. You do not steal from your neighbor's chance at survival. The man, the elder says, was dragged to the center of the village and tied to the whipping post. His shirt was torn from his back, exposing his skin to the biting, merciless wind. The village was made to watch as the reeve laid the lash across his back, each stripe leaving a line of blood that froze almost instantly. He did not cry out, the old man remembers. He just made a low guttural sound, like a dying animal. He was left there for a day and a night, a frozen, bloody warning to all others. The story is meant to be a cautionary tale, a reinforcement of the harsh but necessary laws of survival. But as you listen, you feel a confusing mixture of emotions. There is a grim, righteous satisfaction in the telling. The thief got what he deserved. But beneath it, there is a flicker of pity, of shared humanity. The man who was whipped was not a monster. He was hungry. He was desperate. He was you, on a different day, after a different set of choices. Winter does not just make you cold and hungry. It makes you a judge, a jury, and a potential executioner. You are left with a terrible choice. Do you accuse someone, knowing the brutal punishment that might follow, whether they are guilty or not? Or do you stay silent, absorbing the loss, and allowing the poison of suspicion to grow? You say nothing. Later that night, you find a heavy log and use it to brace the inside of your door even more securely. The bar is no longer enough. The simple act speaks volumes. You are no longer just keeping out the cold and the wolves. You are keeping out your fellow man. The circle of trust has shrunk from the village to the four walls of your own hut. The waking nightmare has revealed its most frightening truth. The greatest monster you face may not be the one howling in the woods, but the one shivering in the hut next door, driven by the exact same desperation that gnaws at your own soul. With the door now barred against your neighbors as well as the night, the circle of your trust has shrunk to its absolute minimum. The hut has become a world unto itself, an island adrift in a sea of universal hostility. When all human solutions have failed, when the body is weak, the larder is lean, and the mind is frayed, you turn to the only frontier left to you. You turn to the heavens. You turn to the unseen world. Faith and fear become the final, desperate tools of survival. In the long, silent hours, you find yourself questioning the God you have been taught to worship your entire life. You have been a good man. You have worked hard, honored your Lord, said your prayers at the village church, and given a share of your meager earnings to the priest. Why this suffering? Why this relentless, grinding cruelty that seems designed to break not just the body, but the spirit? You kneel on the cold-packed earth of the floor, the smoke stinging your eyes, and you pray. But your prayers are different now. They are no longer the rote, memorized words of the Mass. They are raw, desperate, personal bargains whispered into the darkness. You ask for forgiveness for sins you cannot remember committing, hoping to appease a distant, angry God. But the heavens remain silent. Your prayers feel like they are hitting a solid ceiling of cold, empty sky and falling back down unanswered. This spiritual silence is a new kind of isolation, perhaps the most profound of all. Into this silence, older, darker beliefs begin to creep back in from the shadows. The official teachings of the church feel too abstract, too far away. The saints, however, feel closer, more personal. they become less like holy intercessors and more like powerful, temperamental demigods, each ruling their own small domain of suffering. Your wife now whispers a nightly prayer, not just to the Virgin Mary, but to Saint Nicholas, the protector of children, begging him to shield your own from the sickness. You find yourself muttering the name of Saint Anthony, whose fire was said to burn in the limbs of the sick, praying he will keep that fire from your own hearth. But even the saints are not enough, and so the old ways, the pre-Christian whispers that have survived for 1,000 years beneath the surface of your faith, begin to re-emerge. You see your wife quietly tuck a sprig of dried rowan wood, gathered in the autumn, into the thatch above the children's sleeping pallet. It is a charm against night spirits, a piece of magic her grandmother taught her. You do not question it. You find yourself touching the small, smooth river stone you've carried in your pouch since you were a boy, feeling its cold, solid weight as a strange source of comfort. It is a talisman against drowning, but in this sea of snow, it feels just as necessary. The old man is the keeper of this forgotten knowledge. He teaches your son how to carve a small, stylized sunwheel on a piece of scrap wood, telling him to keep it close to the fire to remind the real sun to return. He shows your daughter how to read the shapes in the fire's embers. "See there," he whispers, pointing with a trembling finger. "The shape of a bird. That means news is coming." His pronouncements, born of folklore and desperation, are treated with the gravity of scripture. In a world with no information, the mind will create its own. You become a hunter of omens. Every random event is scrutinized for hidden meaning. A mouse, driven inside by the cold, scurries across the floor. Is it a good sign, a symbol of life's tenacity? Or is it a bad sign, a harbinger of the disease that vermin carry? The family debates it in hushed tones until the old man makes a decision, and his word becomes law. The way a log splits in the fire, the pattern of frost on the hide-covered window, the content of a dream, all become texts to be deciphered. Desperate attempts to find some pattern, some sense of control, in a world that has become utterly chaotic and meaningless. A dream is no longer a simple product of a troubled mind. It is a vision, a prophecy. One night, you dream you are standing in a field of green grass under a warm sun. You wake with tears on your cheeks and a fragile, burning hope in your chest that sustains you for the entire day. The next night, your wife wakes with a gasp, claiming she dreamed of a black dog sitting outside the door. A pall of dread falls over the hut. No one speaks of it, but the fear is a tangible thing. The dream is treated as a warning from the other world, the only news you are likely to receive. One evening, you all kneel to recite the Lord's Prayer. Your voices are a low, tired murmur, filling the smoky room. As you pray, you notice your wife's free hand has its fingers tightly crossed. You see the old man clutching the piece of iron he uses to strike a spark, holding it as if it were a holy relic, and you realize what your faith has become. It is a tangled, desperate web of new gods and old, of Christian prayer and pagan charm, of pious hopes and terrified superstitions. You are praying to anyone and anything that might be listening in the vast, silent, and star-filled darkness. You are hedging your bets against the abyss. A web of faith and fear you have spun around yourself is all you have left. The days have lost all individual character, bleeding one into the next, in a monotonous cycle of dim light and profound darkness, of gnawing hunger and the familiar ache of cold. Hope is not even a memory anymore. It is a foreign word from a forgotten language. You exist. You endure. That is all. And then, one afternoon, something changes. It is so small, so insignificant, that at first, You are certain you have imagined it. It is a sound. Beneath the constant, mournful drone of the wind, you hear something else. A single, soft, wet tick. You freeze, your hands stilling over the piece of leather you are mending. You listen, straining your ears, but there is only the wind. You dismiss it. A trick of the ear. A symptom of the cabin madness you feel creeping at the edges of your mind. Your mind wants to hear things that are not there. It wants to invent reasons to hope. And you have learned that hope is the cruelest torment of all. So you push the sound away and return to your work. But a few hours later, you hear it again. Tick. And then, after a long pause, tick, tick. It is the sound of water. A single drop, melting from the great icicles that hang like daggers from the eaves of your hut, and striking the frozen ground below. It is a sound you have not heard in months. It is the sound of the world's solid state beginning to fail. A fragile, tentative hope, unwanted and unbidden, begins to stir in your chest. You quickly crush it. It is probably a fluke. A brief warming before an even deeper freeze. The next day, however, brings a more undeniable proof. As you sit by the hearth, the murky afternoon light begins to fade, signaling the coming of the long night. But it seems to be taking longer than usual. You look at the task in your hands. You can still see the fine detail of the stitching, the texture of the wood. Yesterday at this time, you would have been working by the light of the fire alone. The day has stretched. It is only by a few minutes, a handful of heartbeats. But it is real. It is a measurable physical change. You look up and meet your wife's eyes. She is looking at the hide-covered window, a strange, questioning expression on her face. She has noticed it too. No one speaks of it, for fear of breaking the spell, but a new shared knowledge enters the room. The world is tilting back towards the sun. A small crack in the armor of winter allows other signs to seep in. The tick-tick of the melting icicles becomes a steady, gentle rhythm, a soft, liquid percussion that is the most beautiful music you have ever heard. One afternoon, a great, heavy whoosh, followed by a tremendous thud, shakes the entire hut. You all jump, startled, your hands reaching for a weapon or a child. But it is not an attack. It is the sound of a massive sheet of snow, heavy with moisture, sliding from the roof and crashing to the ground. It is the sound of the prison walls beginning to crumble. Emboldened, you unbar the door and step outside. The air is still freezing, but it feels different. It's heavy with moisture. You look at the fields. The snow is no longer a pristine dry powder. It is wet, granular, and pockmarked with melting patches that reveal the dark, blessed mud beneath. And then you hear it, a single clear, impossibly loud sound, the chirp of a small bird perched on a bare branch. The sound is so alien, so full of life, that it stops your heart for a second. It is the sound of a promise. You retreat back inside and bar the door, but you bring the promise of the outside world in with you. The mood in the hut has undergone a profound transformation. The oppressive, heavy silence has lifted. Your son, for the first time in what feels like an eternity, lets out a short, sharp laugh at something the old man whispers to him. Your wife begins to hum a tune as she works the loom, a simple, forgotten melody from a summer festival. The change is not a boisterous joy. It is the quiet, exhausted, almost tearful relief of a prisoner who has just heard the key turn in the lock of his cell. You know there are still dangers ahead. Floods from the melting snow, the lingering threat of hunger before the first crops. But the siege is breaking. The tyrant is weakening. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you allow yourself to think about the future. And for the first time, It does not feel like an act of madness. It feels like an act of faith. The fragile hope that arrived with the first thaw is a delicate, uncertain thing. For weeks, the world exists in a state of purgatory between winter's death grip and spring's true rebirth. The snow is gone, but it has left behind a world of mud and ruin. The days are longer, but the air is still raw and cold. But then a day arrives when you open the door not to a blast of frigid air, but to a gentle, humid breeze that carries a new scent. It is the smell of damp earth, truly alive for the first time. Today is the day you emerge from the tomb. You push the heavy door wide open and leave it that way. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, fresh air is allowed to flood the hut. It flushes out the thick, greasy, smoky atmosphere that has been the very air you breathe. The family, blinking and hesitant, follows you out into the light. The brightness, even on this overcast morning, is a physical blow. It makes your head ache and your eyes stream with water. After months spent in near darkness, the full scope of the world is overwhelming, almost terrifying. The vast, open sky above you seems to press down, and you feel a moment of dizziness, unsteady on the soft, sodden ground. You take a deep breath, and the clean, cold air feels alien in your lungs, so different from the thick, recycled air of your prison. Your first walk through the village is not a triumphant parade. It is a grim and silent inspection of the battlefield after the war. The world is not green. It is a uniform, weary brown. The paths are quagmires of mud that suck at your leather shoes. You see the damage that the winter has wrought, now lay bare. A portion of your neighbor's thatched roof has collapsed under the weight of the snow, leaving a gaping hole. The small wooden fence that penned his goats has been smashed to pieces. Your own hut, you see from a distance, looks wounded and tired, sagging slightly to one side. Other families are emerging too, like pale, thin ghosts drawn out by the weak sun. You see their faces for the first time in months. They are all the same. Their skin has a sallow, almost gray tinge. Their clothes, worn and patched, hang loosely on frames that have been whittled down by hunger. Dark circles ring their eyes. There are no joyful shouts of greeting. There are no embraces. There is only a slow, tired nod of acknowledgement as you pass. It is a silent communication, a shared and profound understanding that needs no words. You survived. I survived. We are still here. And then the accounting begins, the quiet, heartbreaking work of counting the cost. You learn that old William, the man you had once suspected of stealing your firewood, did not make it. The red sickness took him in the last, darkest month, along with his infant son. His wife, a hollowed-out shell of a woman, now faces the spring alone with her remaining children. You walk past another hut, the one at the very edge of the village. It is silent. The door hangs slightly ajar. The neighbors say the smoke from their chimney stopped weeks ago. No one knows for sure what happened. The family is simply gone, erased by the winter. The fierce relief of your own family's survival is now tainted with a heavy, aching guilt. Why you and not them? There is no answer. The winter did not choose. It simply took. You return to your own home and conduct your own final grim inventory. You pull out the last of the grain sacks. They are nearly empty, holding only a few days' worth of dusty, gritty oats. You inspect the last of the salted fish. A faint, slimy mold has begun to grow on it. The barrel of pickled vegetables has a sour, unpleasant smell. Your treasury is empty. The great enemy, the cold, has been defeated, but it has left its successor to finish the job. You now face the hungry gap, the long, desperate, foodless weeks of early spring. The ground is soft enough to plow, but there is nothing to harvest. The winter stores are gone. The nightmare has not ended. It has simply changed its form. You stand on the threshold of your hut, looking out at the bleak brown world. You are a survivor. You have emerged from the tomb. But you are not victorious. You are wounded, weary, and still hungry. You have won the war against the winter, but the peace is fragile and the cost has been immense. The relief of survival is inextricably bound to the grief of what was lost and the fear of the challenges yet to come. The weeks that follow your emergence from the hut are a different kind of trial. The world is awake, but it is a starved and desperate world. The hungry gap, the long stretch of time between the end of your winter stores and the first harvest of spring, is a quiet, brutal battle of its own. You have survived the siege, only to find yourself starving in its aftermath. You spend your days foraging, your eyes scanning the muddy forest floor for anything green and edible. For weeks, you find nothing but sodden leaves and bare branches. The hope that sparked with the thaw begins to flicker, threatened by the persistent, gnawing emptiness in your belly. And then, one morning, you see it. Pushing its way up through a patch of last year's dead leaves is a cluster of vibrant green shoots, wild garlic. You fall to your knees and pull one from the earth, bringing it to your nose. The sharp, pungent, alive smell is so overwhelming, it almost makes you weep. You gather as much as you can, your hands shaking slightly. That night, the mood in the hut is transformed. Your wife chops the greens into the thin, watery pottage. The moment you take the first spoonful, an explosion of fresh, sharp, peppery flavor fills your mouth. It is the taste of life. It is the taste of the earth waking up. After months of the monotonous, dead flavors of salt and smoke and dried grain, this simple, wild green tastes more luxurious than any king's feast. It is a promise fulfilled. The world will feed you again. After that first discovery, the return of life accelerates. It is as if the world, having held its breath for so long, lets out a great green sigh. The skeletal trees that have haunted your view for months suddenly erupt in a riot of tiny, bright green leaves. The fields, which you have painstakingly plowed and planted with the last of the seed grain, begin to show the faint, hopeful lines of new growth. The air, once silent or filled with the howling of the wind, is now a constant chorus of birdsong. The sun is now a benevolent presence. You see people in the village working outside without their heavy cloaks, their faces turned up to the sky, soaking in the warmth. The change is not just environmental. It's a deep spiritual sigh of relief from the entire community. The village decides to hold a festival. It is not just a celebration. It is a ritual. It is a necessary, communal act of defiance against the memory of the long, dark night. On an evening when the sun sets late, painting the sky in colors you had forgotten existed, a great bonfire is built in the village common. It is not a small, huddled, fearful fire like your hearth. It is a huge, roaring, triumphant blaze that leaps towards the twilight sky, casting a warm, golden glow over the entire village. It pushes the shadows back, far back into the forest. It is a fire of joy, not of desperation. Someone brings out a fiddle, its wood warped by the winter's damp, its strings out of tune. But when the man draws his bow across it, the sound is the most beautiful thing you have ever heard. It is music. The tune is rustic and lively. At first, people just watch, still trapped in the quiet, weary habits of their confinement. Then, one young couple, their faces still thin but their eyes bright, begins to dance. Another joins them, and then another. Soon, the space around the fire is filled with movement. It is not a graceful dance. It is a clumsy, joyous, slightly wild stomping of feet on the soft earth. It is the dance of people who were not sure they would ever feel strength in their legs again. You see your own children, running and laughing with the others, their faces smeared with soot and happiness, and a feeling so profound and powerful washes over you that it almost brings you to your knees. You stand by the fire, a cup of freshly brewed weak ale in your hand, and you feel the heat on your face. You look at your wife, your children, your neighbors. You see the scars of the winter on all of them, the hollowness that still lingers in their cheeks. But you also see something else, an unbreakable, hard-won resilience. You survived. You endured the waking nightmare. You have walked out of the tomb and into the light. The memory of the darkness will never leave you. It is a part of you now, a quiet knowledge of the abyss. But it no longer holds power over you. The sun is back. The world is alive. And for now, that is more than enough. It is everything.